Hey y'all, it's Chris here from Frontsite. Have you ever wondered what the best home defense weapon system is? There's a lot of talk out there about whether it be shotguns, pistols, rifles, crossbows, whatever. But I'm here to tell you today specifically what I think is the best home defense system you can carry to defend yourself and your family. So I've heard a lot of talk about what is the best home defense weapon system. Our former president thought it was a shotgun, a nice old double barrel shotgun. Well, that was great in the 1800s, but these days the technology has improved so much that there are so many different options for you out there. So I'm just going to get into it. What I believe is the best home defense weapon system out there is the AR-15. Now, the AR-15 is kind of like the late 90s model Honda Civic of firearms. You can customize the hell out of it and make it whatever you want, which is one of my favorite parts about owning an AR-15. You can own two lowers and have at least 4 different rifles with just those 2 lowers. That's for another day of explanation. But what I'm going to show you today are 2 different rifles that I own that I think are very important to have as home defense weapons. And I'm going to show you the differences between the two and discuss what makes for a better home defense system. So this is a Rock River AR-15. Okay. Obviously, the first thing we do before we check any weapon is to make sure it's unloaded. So obviously, no magazine, bolt is locked to the rear, nothing in the chamber. All right. So the Rock River AR-15 for me is a little bit heavier than what I would typically like to carry around. I've seen a lot with longer barrels. It is a 16-inch barrel. I've seen a lot where people are using these types of rifles in the tactical games because it can reach out to several hundred yards and hit a target, but it also is light enough that it doesn't have to be a heavy caliber. So from back to front, I'm going to talk about what I have on this rifle. This is pretty much a fully customized AR-15, but the basic parts are still Rock River. So a new Magpul buttstock, all right, collapsible buttstock, you can lock it as you need to. I like the locking mechanism because it gives you the chance to keep your rifle stock in place and it doesn't slip. Next up is a larger charging handle. It's ambidextrous. You don't have to worry about just using your left hand. You can use your right hand as well. Okay. I did not install a ambidextrous safety. I have been trained to use my left hand and my right hand to manipulate the safety, so that's not really a thing for me, but a lot of shooters typically have those on there just for sheer comfort. So the optic, I have a Leupold optic on here. It's a low power variable optic. It's adjustable 1:4. And anytime you have a low power optic like this, you also want to have some type of optic that you can shoot with inside of 50 yards, inside of 100 yards. So I added a small RMR open optic here on the side at a 45-degree cant. I've seen a couple different styles or different places to put this. I like the 45-degree cant because at the end of the day, all I'm doing is twisting the rifle in my shoulder and it puts it right there in front of me. Some people like to have the optic on top. That's cool too, but the only problem with that is now you're not just operating with maybe 3 inches of difference from muzzle height over bore. Now you're operating with maybe 4 or 5. So you want to be careful with, if you know you're going to put it on top at the 12 o'clock position, you might want to just remember, right, you're going to have a different holdover when it comes to using that optic, unless you zeroed it a certain distance. So really remember and understand your height over bore. All right, so we got my optics on here. Going forward, I did change the handguard on this rifle. This is the original barrel, but I changed the handguard because it's lighter, right? It's skeletonized, it's real light, and you want to take as much weight off of this thing as you possibly can. Because this thing, the more stuff you put on here, the heavier it gets. I've been to schools that have been a week long, and specifically for rifle school, rifle shooting. And you see guys show up and they have all of this stuff and lights and cameras and all kind of crazy stuff on their rifles. And at the 3rd day, maybe, you see parts start falling off. And I don't mean like legitimately falling off. I mean, they're actually taking them off on breaks because it's just too heavy for them to work with for hours at a time. So minimalist is the best. I just put a few things on here just because I thought they were cool, wanted to try them out. They're not going to be on here the entire time I'm working with this rifle. But handguard, obviously, is one thing that I wanted to change, and so I did that. I added this here, this little elastic piece, so when I do put my light on here, it'll be a smaller light. I have a way to mount the push button because I have the small angled grip or foregrip here. The reason I have the small angled here is because I don't like those long foregrips. I never have. And the reason I don't like it primarily is because you see it on the movies where the guys are gripping it like a broom handle. That's not what they were meant for. That might be originally what they were thought they should be for, but really you need something to press your hands into and get a good press into your shoulder. That's what that's for. So this angle grip gives me something to do that with, and so I can use my C-clamp method to grip my firearm, grip my rifle just like that. Okay. The last thing I added was this small can on the end of my rifle. Now, it is not a suppressor. It is a flash hider. But what it does is it funnels most of the gas forward and not just in any one direction. And it is also a little bit heavy, right? So I don't typically like adding weight to my rifle just because, again, like I told you about those guys, at third day they're done with their stuff. But what it does for precision and for follow-up shots is great, because what it does is it reduces recoil for me, and instead of pushing the gas one way or another, it just pushes it forward, and the weight helps hold the muzzle down a little bit better. So when I'm doing those longer range shots, I don't have to deal with muzzle flip quite as much. So the last thing I don't have on here, but I typically like to talk about, is a sling. You have to have some type of sling on a rifle to be able to do anything with it, right? You can't just have it sans sling, because if you do, what happens if you got to put this down? I don't like dropping my equipment in dirt if I don't have to. It's just, I like to keep it on me. So two options, right? A 1 or a 2 point sling. Now, I've been trained with and I've worked with a 1 point sling for probably 16 or 17 years now. 1 point slings are fine. The only problem with the 1 point sling is if you let it go, it's just going to dangle wherever it dangles, like a Flavor Flav clock. Okay, and it ain't that kind of party. So instead, what I prefer is a 2 point sling with a QD mount, and you can adjust that sling as necessary. So obviously the sling attaches to either the furthest front or somewhere down this handguard you can possibly get it. That's closer to the front, and also in the back, either on the buttstock itself or near the buttstock back in here. I prefer buttstock to the front of the rifle just because it gives me a little bit more length there. And when I need it the most, when I need to tighten this down to my body, all I need to do is pull my sling, tighten it down, and it tightens down against your chest, and it holds it there, and I can work with both hands with this rifle just sitting here, just like this. So that's why I typically prefer a 2 point sling. Again, 1 point slings are fine, but again, if you let it hang far enough, it's just going to dangle between your legs. And again, it's really not that kind of party, guys. Sorry. So before I get to my next rifle, I want to talk about caliber real quick. So caliber is going to be based on really what you prefer to use. Now, if you're using an AR-15, typically the most standard caliber is a 223 or a 5.56. I would suggest that if you're going to buy a rifle, have it chambered for either 223 Wildy or 5.56. Don't want to get into the science behind why. Just hit the I believe button and trust me on that one. Okay. And for home defense, 5.56. Typically we shoot 55 grain. I know some special operations units or some SWAT teams that will use a 62 grain bullet. Either's fine. Just make sure that when you zero your rifle, you zero it with the ammunition you plan on carrying in that rifle. So we got 223 or 5.56 is one caliber. Another popular home defense caliber is 300 Blackout. Now, what's good about 300 Blackout is if you buy the subsonic ammunition and you put a suppressor on it, it is super quiet, super quiet. It's still going to wake people up in the house if something bad happens, but shouldn't they be awake anyway if there's a home invasion? Probably should. But the good thing about 300 Blackout is it has some knockdown power, and it's really, really good for close quarter fights. Downsides to 300 Blackout is it's only really good for close quarters. It's not really that good for anything further out of 100 or 150 yards. It's just the bullet's so heavy, it just kind of falls short. You know, maybe a 223 if you're looking for a multi-purpose rifle. 5.56 223 might be your best option, but again, 300 Blackout is there. Now, the cool thing about 300 Blackout and 5.56 is if you have a lower receiver for a 5.56, that also can be used for a 300 Blackout. The only thing you have to change is the barrel, right? So what I would do, if I built rifles for a living, is I would have a lower receiver for a 5.56, and I would have an upper for a 300 Blackout and an upper for a 5.56 or 223. They're interchangeable, right? The bolts are interchangeable. The only problem is the barrel is not. So please, 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 if you do that, make sure that you put the right upper on the lower for the right ammunition. Okay, it's gonna be a bad day if you put a 223 upper with a 300 blackout round in there. It's going to be messy. So please pay attention to that. It's very important. So with ballistics comes the type of ammunition you want to carry. If you're in your home, you want to make sure you're carrying some type of ammunition that is not going to over penetrate your drywall, studs, or anything like that. I would typically suggest a soft point or a hollow point ammunition. Those are typically the best ones that will keep it from over penetrating. You don't want, any kind of green tip 223 whizzing through your house, or God forbid you live in a trailer and you shoot 3 trailers over. Right? We don't want that either. So make sure you pay attention to the type of ammunition that you put in your rifle as well, because again, you don't want to overshoot or shoot through things. So speaking of 300 blackout, I have here a 10.5 inch 300 black belt AR-15. This is a Palmetto State Armory build. Right, it's not yet complete. I kind of threw a couple pieces here together at the last minute because it is a 10.5 inch barrel, and it is still illegal to put a buttstock on a 10.5 inch rifle. However, ATF, don't come throw me now. We're good, right? Just want to make sure, because I do have a buttstock on here just for now, because I just want to show the different options you could have if you get a license to carry a short barrel rifle, or if in the future the laws change, which it looks like they might. So first things first is the Palmetto State Armory build. Straight up PSA, I put a buttstock on it, different grip on it, just for funsies, whatever. The buttstock is a really easy, really lightweight buttstock from Magpul. I do have a foldable stock mount here, so if my bolt was forward, I could just flip this sucker around here, and the buttstock would fold into the side of the rifle. Right, just makes it easier to stick in a backpack if you're going hiking or somewhere else like that. And you want something for protection. It's really good for protection against, say, bears, coyotes, wolves, whatever. All right, ambidextrous charging handle. All right, it's always good to have an ambidextrous charging handle. I did put the ambidextrous safeties on here so you can get it from both sides. Okay. With that, I have a flip up iron sight, rear and front. There we go. Because again, you always need a backup optic or irons or something when you're operating with a red dot battery operated optic. So I got my irons. EOTech. This is an EOTech red dot. I love my EOTechs. EOTechs are fantastic optics. I'm not sponsored by EOTech. I wish I was, but they have fantastic holographic optics. The more I learn about the reason why they're certain sizes, the more I like them. This one specifically is if you had night vision, you could use this for night vision. Moving forward, again, this is what just kind of pieced it together. It's another PSA handguard. I did put a different style of grip on here. Right, fits my hand perfectly. And if you see here, there's a rubber piece there, and I got one on both sides. Because with these rifles, a lot of times if you're shooting these a lot, and I don't typically shoot this a lot. In fact, I have very few rounds to this rifle at all. But shooting rifles like this, higher caliber, shoot a good bit, they do have a tendency to get hot. So you see a lot of times people will have suppressor covers, or you have covers that go over the rifle itself. What I have found is that these two pieces of rubber here do keep my hand relatively cool without having to have a whole sock or something sitting on top of my rifle. Don't have to worry about that. So I do like that. Different type of muzzle device, came from PSA. Not really sure if I like it or not, but it does just fine so far. Last thing I want to talk about with this rifle is I did give myself a bit more with the trigger guard here. I did replace that piece because if I'm shooting with gloves, typically gloves have a tendency to get in there and get difficult to move back and forth. So I do like to have a little bit more space there. But also, this is another one of those LaRue Tactical triggers. Again, can't say enough good stuff about LaRue Tactical. Excellent triggers, excellent company. So that's it for this rifle. Again, this is a 300 blackout. And again, the purpose for this rifle is specifically for close quarters, if you're doing anything close quarters. Again, you probably use a soft point or a hollow point if you're in your home. And again, if I didn't have this, I had a different muzzle brake on it, I could put a suppressor on there. That would be excellent as well. But again, suppressors only really work if you're using subsonic ammunition. All right, and that is it for my discussion on your home defense weapon systems. The AR-15, in my personal opinion, being the best one. Again, you can never go wrong with a pistol, a really good pistol, but I would probably steer clear from shotguns just in general because they throw buckshot everywhere. So if you like this video, click like, hit subscribe on this channel, and follow us for more content coming forward here in the future. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome to Frontsite.